Hello everybody. I would like to take a few minutes and further discuss authentic assessment. I know over the last few days you've received numerous handouts and overviews and little video clips about assessment, but it's such an important topic in regards to education and teaching that we really need to spend some quality time to make sure that we understand everything that's involved with the concept of assessment. So on one of the previous handouts you received an overview of both informal and formal assessment types. An informal assessment can be simply asking questions during a lesson to gauge if students are understanding the concepts. It can be portfolio development, etc. But formal assessment can be both traditional and authentic. So an example of a formal traditional assessment would be like a test or a quiz, multiple choice, standardized. But when we get to authentic assessment, it is formal, which means grades are taken, entered in the grade book. Usually it involves scoring tools like a answer key or a rubric. And so let's talk a little bit about authentic assessment types. In one of the previous videos, I also mentioned rubrics and a website called Rubistar. And Rubistar is one example of a website that's very helpful in order to create very quick but very detailed grading tools for authentic assessments. So authentic assessments, or sometimes we call them direct assessments or performance assessments, really pushes students to think critically about the subject matter. And on this screen you'll see a list of the authentic assessment types or some of those strategies that you could use in your lesson plans. So if you're sitting there wondering, well, what do I do? How do I include an authentic assessment in my lesson plan? Well, hopefully the examples on the screen will give you some inspiration. So for example, if you really wanted to test students' ability to speak in front of a crowd or in front of a group, maybe you have students do historical role play, maybe you have them interview somebody or create questions in interview, or give them questions to interview someone. Maybe you have them give a newscast presentation or a puppet show or tell a story to the class or to a small group, or make a video talk show or something related to television, something that they can relate to. Maybe you want them to make something, so like a brochure, a game, a map, a poster, make a newspaper about something that you're teaching in class, a public awareness campaign, a timeline, writing a musical. See, these are all examples of authentic assessment in the classroom. And so as you kind of look at my list here, and you can go through the multimedia features of digital storytelling and multimedia projects. There's all these different examples that are available to us. You can kind of get a hint as to what you could do with your students. And always make sure that whatever you decide is developmentally appropriate, because we want to make sure that we're not asking students to do something that they are just not ready for. And you'll get better at that over time, deciding what is right. And also you can ask fellow teachers, as well as kind of look at what other instructors are doing as well. So see here, there are all the core areas. There's science, authentic assessments, some writing assessments, some art, music, math, and work skills. So there's a lot of different categories, and there are a lot of different types or ways that we can authentically assess a student. Now, the above examples were taken from Rubistar, so they were not things that I made up. And that's why I want you to really take a look at that Rubistar website, because not only does it give you some of those ideas if you're really struggling, but also helps you create a rubric, which is the scoring instrument or the grading tool that we have to create in order to grade a poster, grade a puppet show, etc. So as you remember with formal assessment, with the traditional assessment of a test or a quiz, we have an answer key. So you create a test, and then you have a separate piece of paper that has all the numbers that represent the questions on the exam or test, and then the correct answers. So if you have 20 questions on the test, maybe number 1 is A, 2 is B, the correct answer for 3 is D. Then when a student would submit an assignment, you would then sit down with your stack of papers and your answer key, and you would grade comparing the student's answers to your answers on the answer key. But you can't do that with a poster. You can't do that with a story. And so how do you grade a student who is actually giving you something that is not a bunch of A, B, C, D answers or fill in the blank or matching? Well, you have to use a rubric. And so that's going to take a little time on your part in order to create the rubric so you can share it with students. So for example, on the screen you can see If you wanted students to make a poster about a book that they read, what would you want the finished product to look like? So when you sit down and think about, okay, I want students to make a poster, close your eyes and seriously think about, what do you want that poster to look like? In your mind, what should it look like? Should the poster be colorful? Should it have pictures? Can they write on the poster board, or do you want everything typed and then glued? How many facts do you want? For example, if you're writing, if they're going to create a poster about a book, how many facts about the book would you like for them to include on the poster board? So as you can see, the more details that you can sit down and think about ahead of time, the more information you can include in the rubric, the clearer the picture is for the student, so they can really meet your goals and your criteria if you tell them what you want. So a rubric looks like what you see on your screen. Oftentimes it's a table, sometimes it's a checklist, but as you can see, there are categories and there are numbers. And the categories obviously will change depending on what type of rubric or project you have. So if you are making a poster, which is what the rubric is for on this screen, maybe you're looking for clarity, which means the graphics are very easy to see from about 6 feet away. They're original. The graphics are really related to the book or to the topic. The labels, so anything that's on the poster related to a subject or an area of interest, it's labeled properly. All the elements that you have listed are on there. It's very attractive. But if you don't like these categories, that's okay too. See, that's the beauty of authentic assessment. The teacher totally controls what they want students to do. Also, the point totals. On this screen, you see 4, 3, 2, 1. But of course, you can change this. It could be 10, 8, 5, 3. It can be anything that you really want it to do. And then also, you can weight categories, which means if you really think the most important thing about this poster are that the required elements are included. So if required elements means, for example, that they talk about 5 or 6 topics related to the book, then you can actually put more emphasis on this category. So instead of only being worth 4 points, maybe you times it by 2. So once you grade the assignment, then this actually is worth 8 points for a maximum instead of 4 points. And you can even indicate that on the rubric for students to see. So let's say you have a poster in front of you and you're looking at it and it looks wonderful, so it's time to grade it. Well, you might print your rubric off and fill in the blanks, or if it's on the computer, you could, of course, highlight the different sections that they meet and then, change the color. So let's say, for example, this poster's awesome and we're going to give this student a perfect score for graphics and clarity. If I'm doing it on the computer, what I can do is highlight this section and then move on to the next one. I'm looking at the graphics. They're very original. They're very unique. So you might want to highlight the 4 because that's the maximum score for this category. And so on. So as you can see, I keep highlighting as I grade. So if the graphics are very relevant, give them the 4. If they're not, decide how that fits into your scoring. The labels, the required elements. And so when you're done, how you determine what the grade is for the student is you add up the columns. So let's say they have a couple 4s, maybe they have a 3 in this column here, a couple 3s. So whatever you add, so 8 points plus 3, that's 11, plus 3 is 14. Let's say they have another 8 because everything's relevant, that's 22. And then we have attractiveness. Let's say it's a 4, so that's a 26. All right, so then you add up what's the maximum score. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 24, 28. So if we hypothetically add up the student's score, they earned a 26 out of 28. And you can do the math. It's just basic divide 26 by 28. And that's a very good score. And so then you would put the equivalent of a percentage or A, B, C, D on the rubric and hand it back to them after entering it into your grade book. So as you can see, this type of formal assessment, which is authentic assessment, really pushes students to kind of build something, create something, explore a topic even further than they would on a traditional multiple choice, true, false, or another form of standardized assessment. So again, this is a formal assessment. It's authentic in nature. You must use a rubric in order to fairly and effectively grade the student's work.